This is part 2 of the video discussing the concepts and solutions related to the week 6 challenge question. This is Linda Gaston, your instructor. So as stated in part 1 of this video, we're going to be working on this programming challenge where we have a series of account numbers, PIN codes, and balances in a file called, that's actually the path to that file is pointed to by F1. And then we have a series of transactions that we're going to apply against that file, add and subtract transactions, and that's in a file called F2. And as discussed, we'll be matching the PIN codes of these two files and the account numbers of these two files to make sure that we're applying the information to the right file, to the right account, and then we have some rules here to where we can't take the account balance below 0 and that the PIN numbers have to match. As discussed in part 1, you must be familiar with these concepts to understand how to create the solution and to follow this video. So before we discuss the solution to the video, let's take a careful look at the files that we're going to be using. Notice the accounts file. There are 3 entries in it. And the first one is the account number, the PIN number, and the balance. And so what this really will be is a 2-dimensional array that our program is going to have to step through. So we'll have an outer loop that will take us through each of the rows, and then we're going to have an inner loop that takes us through each of the elements in each one of the individual rows. So we'll be controlling the outer rows and the inner elements. So look carefully at the accounts.txt file. And then let's look at the account balances because these are going to change after we run the program. Let's also look carefully at our transaction file and its structure. It actually has 4 elements in each one of these arrays. So we're going to have a 2-dimensional array that we're going to turn this structure into in our program. And we'll have to step through each of the rows, and we're going to have to step through each of the elements in each row. But before that, as you'll see in a moment, we have to strip off the pipe symbols, and we also have to strip off the return symbols that are embedded here in this file to make them individual rows. So let's start looking at a solution. There may be other solutions, but this is one potential solution to this problem. So in Codio, you're given this path to F1 and F2, but I'm not running in Codio, so I'm actually going to provide the path to these 2 files on the Python Anywhere server. So we'll use the same variable names F1 and F2. Notice we're going to have 2 functions here. We're going to have one function that we use that we're calling pipe to text. And basically what we're going to do is have our program to pass the actual contents of this file to this method, to these 2 files actually, to this method. First thing it's going to do is strip off the line returns that we discussed, and then it's going to go through each of the rows and it's going to split off the pipe symbol. So now we're going to end up with an array that does not have the pipe symbols and it does not have the line returns. When we're done with the program, after we update the values, we're going to have to put this structure back into the piped format that we originally had. So we're going to do that using this to pipe function. And so this is how that function is going to work. It's going to use this for I in range. The outer loop here will use the I in range to control populating the rows, and then this inner loop will put the pipes back between each one of the elements in the rows. So these are the 2 functions, but they haven't been called yet. We put these functions at the beginning of our program so that the Python interpreter can parse through them and have them in memory before they are called down here in this part of the program, which really starts everything. So we start our program, we have our functions here, but we actually start our program with this read statement. So here, notice, we have a fairly complex statement here that's doing several things at one time, but the way to approach a statement like this is outside in. So I should say inside out actually. So basically what we're going to do here is we're going to execute this open statement. So we're going to open the F1 file. So in this particular case, we are opening our accounts.txt file. We're opening it in read mode. So here we have our handle to that file, and we're going to execute the read method on it. So here's the structure where we open the file, it's ready, and we can execute the read method on it. After that method is executed, we've read the entire contents of the file, and as discussed in the first video, we can put the entire contents of the file in a variable. In this case, we're going to take the entire contents of this file and we're going to pass it to the part2 function. At this point, the line returns and the pipe symbols are in the file. This is the file in its raw, unprocessed format. Now, after this function executes, the result is going to go in the accounts variable. So at this point, we're passing the file that we have opened and its contents to the part2 function. The part2 function says, I'm going to take this value that was passed to me by my caller, by the calling function here, and I'm going to consider this going into a parameter in my function called text. So I'm going to execute the split method on this text structure that was passed to this function here. Now notice, in Python, these functions, the names don't have to match. It's all positional. So what goes here gets called to this function and put here. Since we're calling it text in this function, we're going to be referencing text as we go forward in the function. So we have the text structure. We're going to execute the split method on it. Initially, we're going to split it for the line returns. So the line returns, that's going to split off at the end of every row. But now we have to handle the contents in each of the rows and get rid of the pipes. So we're going to use a for I in range, starting with 0, because arrays are 0-based. This structure is an array that we get, and it's 0-based, all the way up to the length of the records that are now in this variable. And at this point, as we step through each one of them, we're going to split off the pipe. So right now, we're returning a structure that's cleaned up. It's a cleaned up list that will go back to the caller. So the caller said, execute this and put the results in here. So now accounts includes a cleaned up version of the account file without the line returns and without the pipes. And then we're going to do the same thing for the transaction file. We're going to open the F2 file that we got here, which points to the transaction text file. We're going to execute the read method on this structure. Then we're going to pass that to the same part2 function. It's going to take in that structure, split off the line returns, and use this for I in range loop to step through each one of the elements and split off the pipe. Then it's going to return, again, the cleaned up transaction structure to this transaction variable here. So at this point, we've executed these first two instructions that call the functions above. Now the program continues to flow through to the main section. Now this is where we are going to step through each one of the transactions that we packaged up and formatted to go here. So this is our outer loop to step through the transactions. So we have an outer loop here, and then we're going to have an inner loop where we're stepping through each one of the individual columns in the rows. So for each row, that's what this outer loop says here for transaction index, all the way up to the length of the transactions that we got here. We're going to take each one of these elements that we get for each one of the indexes and put it here. Then we're going to look at the length that we got here. We're going to see if it's greater than 4, because remember there are 4 elements in each of the rows for the transaction table. And we're going to see if we have a matching account. So now we're going to start stepping through the accounts in the account table. So we'll say for the account index, starting at the beginning of the account table to the length of the account table, we're going to take that value and put it in this variable called account. Now remember, each one of the account rows is 3 elements. So we're going to say if the length of each one of these rows that we're getting here is greater than or equal to 3, then we're going to begin to take the account information, which is the third element here, and put it, the balance, from the third element in the account and put it in balance. And then we're going to take the transaction amount, which is the second, even though this is index 1. Remember, these are 0 based, so it's 0, 1. The transaction amount goes here. And then we ask if the account number, which is the first number in the account structure that we get, equals the third number in the transaction file. So you're looking to see if the positions of the account numbers here are equal. If so, we look to see if the pins are equal. And if you check these files, you'll see that these indexes that we're using align with the account number for each file and the pin number for each file. Then if we have a match, then we say if the first element in the transaction file, which is the command that tells us add or subtract, we ask if it's an add, then we're going to add to the balance of the accounts record. If it's not, we'll ask if it's subtract, and if so, we're going to ask a question. We're going to ask if the amount that we want to subtract is less than or equal to the balance. So if we have if this transaction equals sub, and the transaction amount is less than or equal to balance, then we are going to subtract that amount from the balance. And then at the very end, we write back the answer to the original file. So let's see this program in action. So we have in our accounts text file, account 111 with the balance of 123, with a pin of 123 and a balance of 1800, 222 with the pin of 223 and 3000, and 333 with the pin of 323 with a balance of 600. Now what we're going to do is apply the transactions to these. So once again, in the transaction file, we are adding $200. We're adding 200 to account 111 with a pin of 123. So that means we should see the balance of account 111 go to 2,000, because remember we just saw that it was 1,800. We're going to be adding 500 to 222. So we should expect that balance to be 3,500 after the program runs, because we just saw that it was 3,000. And we're subtracting 100 from 333. So we should see its balance change to 500. So if you look at this program, it really doesn't print anything, but it does change the account values and writes them back. So let's run the program, and then we'll take a look at the files to see their values changing. So we're going to run the program here. All right, let's run it. So if you look at the bottom of the screen, you'll see the program executing. We're loading up the Python 3.7 interpreter. And if you take a look at the accounts text file now that the program has run, we see the values have changed as expected to 2,000, 3,500, and 500. If you have any questions or would like to walk through this program together or look at any errors you may have in your code, please email me to set up a virtual office appointment. Thank you for your time and attention during this video. I hope it helped.